learners, and welcome to lesson 69 on fractions of a second and comparing and ordering decimal numbers. So, fractions of a second are usually expressed as decimals. For example, Joe ran 100 meters in 14, and we're not going to say 14 and 6/10 seconds, even though that's what this decimal is read, is 14 and 6/10. We're just going to say 14.6 seconds. So Joe ran 100 meters in 14.6 seconds is the way that that is said. Or Sally swam 50 meters in 28.43 seconds. Sometimes we even abbreviate this more to just say 14.6. So some people would say Joe ran that in 14.6, which would mean 14 seconds and 6/10 of a second extra. Or Sally swam that 50 meters in 28.43 would mean in 28 seconds and 43 hundredths of a second. Sometimes they even will, if it's 14.0, say that it was 14 and 0/10, we would say that that's 14 flat. Joe ran that in 14 flat. So the thing you need to know is that when we're measuring something in seconds, it's because we want to be really, really precise about the time. If you had a stopwatch and you tried to stop it right at 5 seconds, if you have a stopwatch in front of you and you want to try that, see if you can wait until it gets to 5 seconds and then try to stop it right then. You're never going to be able to stop it, or at least I don't think you'll be able to stop it, right at 5 seconds, because it takes your brain a fraction of a second to even tell your hand to move and for your hand to hit the button. So that's why when with runners, they use machines to measure it to that exact point, because a person doing it with a stopwatch isn't even completely accurate. When we're talking about this, you need to know that that's not a lot of time, but you need to know that it's more than 14 and less than 15. All right, let's jump into the math part of this. So in order to compare decimals, these are the steps you need to follow, and it's important that you follow these steps or I promise you, you will make mistakes. The first step is to line them up vertically by the decimal point, just like you do if you were going to add or subtract decimals. The second part is to annex, which remember was adding zeros to give them the same place value, and that'll make a lot of sense in the example when you see what we're doing. And then the third step is to compare them from the left side to the right side to see which is smaller and which is bigger. So let's look at our first example. This says to compare 3.72 to 32.1. So what was my first step? What did I have to do? Right, I'm going to write them vertically with their decimals in line. I lined up my decimals, and that showed me right away which one is a lot bigger, right? Because this 32 is sticking out way farther than the 3.72. My second step was to annex my zeros in case I got to the decimals, but I can tell right away that which of these numbers is bigger. Good. All right, example B has 3 numbers, and this says to order them from least to greatest. So my first step is that I'm going to write them vertically with their decimal points aligned. I have 2.04, I have 2.2, and I have 2.22. Now in this question, was any of them, or were any of them obviously much bigger than the other? No, they all have a whole value of 2, so we're just dealing with the decimals. My second step is very important then in this case, and that is to annex the zeros so they're all the same place value. So I need to annex 1 0 there so they all have 2 decimals. Now I'm going to look at the decimals as though they were whole numbers. So this number I'm going to read as 4, and this number I'm going to read as 20, and this one I'm going to read as 22. That's how I'm going to figure out which one is the smallest. So I'm going to start with the whole numbers. They're all the same because I always start from the left to the right. The whole numbers are the same, so I'm going to move to the next step. And so in the tenths column, I have a 0, a 2, and a 2. So which one is the smallest? Right, the 0. So 0, 4 is going to be our smallest number, our least number. So I'm going to write that right down here as our smallest. And then our second smallest, we have to go to the hundredths columns because these are both 2. And so I have a 0 and a 2. So which is smaller? The 0. So in this column, 20 is smaller than 22. And so I will write that as my second number. And then my third one is the 2.22. And notice that in my original answer, I can drop those zeros that I had annexed in before and just write it as the original term. So written from least to greatest is 2.04, 2.2, and then 2.22. Had I not written in that 0, I probably would have thought that 2 is smaller than 4, 0, 4, but really this number is 20. So that's why that was very, very important. All right, I want you to try example C on your own. So the first step, write these numbers in vertical order, line up those decimals, then annex any zeros that you need to, and put them in least to greatest order. Bring your answers with you to class tomorrow. Go ahead and get to work.